barbs. We're going to go over Marichyasana A and B, also known as Sage Mariachi A and B. You usually hear a Sanskrit version of it, but sometimes you do hear the English once in a while. The main commonalities between the two poses are one, hip compression, sort of like how my left leg is, like getting your knee or getting your thigh as close to your chest as possible. So therefore, you're also working on your glute flexibility. And the second priority that's common between the two is chest opening and shoulder mobility, because you're in a bind. So in order to get into a bind, you need to have some rotation and some opening of the chest. Where it differs is for Marichyasana A, one of your legs is straight, so you need some hamstring flexibility. But in B, your opposite leg is in a half lotus, so you need external rotation. Some of the poses that can help you get into it or get deeper is one, wind removing pose. You can do this while watching TV if you want, because you're literally on your back, and depending on what you want, it's very minimal effort. You're going to pull your knee into your shoulder, and in the opposite leg, you want to flex or point. Regardless, you want to have it engaged to help open up your hip on the right side a little bit more. You can hold this and only use your arm. You can also have your hand underneath, behind your thigh, or interlace it underneath your elbow. But because I am lazy, I like to hook it and pull it. Mobility is flexibility and strength. So another thing you can do is, as you're pulling your knee towards your shoulder, away from your rib cage, you are pushing your knee into your forearm. This way, you can build the strength little by little to get a better hip compression. Obviously, if you use weights or whatnot, you'll probably build the strength faster, but that's one easier way that you can do it. Also, in wind removing pose, I like to flex my foot to maximize the hamstring stretch that I can get in that pose. In terms of shoulder opening, or chest opening and shoulder mobility, there's the oldie but goodie Gomakasana arms, or you can do reverse namaste. I can go over both. I couldn't find a strap, or I couldn't find my strap, so I'm using a charger cord, which is good enough. You can use a belt or a towel as well. For Gomakasana arms, because one arm is on top and one arm is on the bottom, the top arm is in an internally rotated state, and the bottom arm is in an externally rotated state. So by doing it on both sides, you'll work on your shoulder mobility in all directions. For the bottom arm, we're going to start with the bottom arm first. You want to pull it as close to, or so your elbow is as close to the midline as possible. And then when you bend it, you can maybe reach for your forearm or your elbow and try to get your hand as high up in your upper back. We used to do this a lot in Korea, so even if I wasn't very flexible starting yoga, I had at least some rotation, or shoulder rotation. Then with your top arm, you reach it up and back and interlace your hands. Or if you don't have that mobility yet, you can grab whatever prop you're using and grab it with your left hand. Then slowly you want to work your right hand down so you can grab your hand. In terms of reverse namaste, you can do it in a modified version or a regular version. So modified is you round slightly, get your knuckles to touch, and fist bump yourself from the back. Then sit up straight and point your elbows towards the back. It's important to point your elbows towards the back of the room, even if maybe you're not all of your the base of your fingers can touch, to open up your chest and to work on your upper body strength or upper back strength. Because the stronger your upper back is, it also helps to open up your chest. Or for the non-modified version, you still want to round slightly. Point your elbows to the front of the room and try to see if you can get your fingertips to touch. Then maybe the first section of your fingers. Then as you sit up straight, you want to come into a slight back bend. As you point your elbows towards the back of the room, just like the modified version. Again, like it's not as important for your palms to touch, but it's a lot more important for you to continuously point your elbow towards the back to open up your chest. And for the part that differs, you need external rotation Marichyasana A B. Because you're in a half lotus, you can always just take a half lotus with your right leg. So you want to have your left leg straight, or depending on which leg you're starting off with, you want to close your knee joint first and then rotate. It's important to close it first because if you don't close it and you just straight up rotate, you can see that there's like more opportunities for you to hurt your knee as opposed to if you close it first. After you rotate it, point your knee towards the ground, and you can work on this, or you can work on having your in the half lotus just like this with your hands behind and pushing your chest forward, or you can start to hinge with a flat back. If you can't do a half lotus yet, you can also do this in a Marichyasana. So the sole of your foot is by your inner thigh. Then as you inhale, sit up straight. Exhale, hinge with a flat back. It's important to keep your back as flat as possible because we're stretching our muscles at a lengthened position. If you were too round, you might get further down, but you're losing some of the benefit in the stretch. Now we're going to go over the two poses. For Marichyasana A, your heel should be by your butt, and your foot should be by your inner thigh, but it's not touching. It should be close, but you don't want it to touch. As you inhale, sit up straight. Exhale, hinge, reach forward. Then rotate your arms internally so thumbs are facing down. And try to loop your arm around your leg and grab your hand. Once you have it, you're reaching your chin towards your shin as you hinge and get lower. If you can't get the rotation because of you're lacking a hip compression, you can just have your arm towards the side and dig and drive your arm into your knee. And then the priority is the hip mobility and the hip compression. So even if your straight leg has to be bent, prioritize the compression, number one, then the leg. So if you need to bend this leg to dig your arm further back, or you need to bend your leg to get into your bind, and then you can get into a better compression, it's much better to do that and then work on straightening out your right leg afterwards. For Marichyasana B, you want to bend and close your knee first, rotate it so your foot is in your hip crease, then lean back and step your opposite leg or opposite foot towards your butt. Then rotate your knee towards the ground. This is why there's a big external rotation in Marichyasana B, or else you wouldn't be able to get into a half lotus, or I guess like this. You wouldn't be able to get into half lotus. From here, as you inhale, you want to sit up straight. Exhale, hinge, reach your arms forward as far as they can go. Then start to come into your bind. Again, the number one priority is the hip mobility. So this is totally fine. You just work on driving your knee towards the back to work on your hip compression. If you're prioritizing the hinge over the hip, you're losing the benefit of the pose. And if you're trying to force yourself into a bind and you're losing the hip compression as well, or I guess like right now I'm lopsided, that can happen too. So try to have your hips as even as possible. It's inevitable that it won't be completely even, but as close as you can. Sit up straight and then come into your bind. Oh, fuck. Then come into your bind. Then only once you have your bind, you want to try to close the gap between your chest and your leg. Even the most flexible people I've seen haven't really been able to do it. I definitely can't either. But like with Marichyasana A, you want to be reaching forward as you're hinging instead of completely rounding. Oh. So that was it for Marichyasana A and B. If you get one thing out of the video, make sure you are always focusing on the hip compression and the hip mobility. Even if your leg might not be straight, even if you can't get into a bind, that is the main priority of this pose. So always prioritize that. If you had to pick if you had to pick between any of the other alignment cues in the two poses. Thank you for watching.